chosen one, you did not realize it, but the step you just took activated a blessing that has been forming around your life for years. It may have looked like one decision, one boundary, one quiet act of courage, one release, one yes, or one no, but in the unseen, it was the move that proved you were finally ready to stop carrying the old season into the new one. This is not random. Something greater has guided your attention here because you need to recognize what opened before doubt convinces you to return to what you just outgrew. Your waiting is over, but not because everything appears in one instant. Your waiting is over because the old delay no longer has the same authority over your path. The move you made interrupted a pattern. It showed the divine that your actions are finally agreeing with your prayers. People may not understand why that step mattered. They may call it small, late, emotional, unnecessary, or strange. But heaven measures differently. The divine looks for alignment, and when your action aligned with your becoming, a decade door began to open. I need you to understand something before we go deeper. This message is not only about the blessing, it is about the step that unlocked it. Because if you do not recognize what you just did, you may be tempted to minimize it. And if you minimize it, you may return to the very pattern your spirit just broke. That is why this matters. The step you took may not have impressed anybody. It may not have created applause. It may not have changed your surroundings immediately. You may still be in the same room, facing the same responsibilities, carrying the same schedule, hearing the same noise around you. But spiritually, something changed. Something old lost its grip. Maybe your step was walking away from a situation that kept draining your peace. Maybe your step was refusing to explain yourself to someone who had already decided not to understand you. Maybe your step was choosing silence instead of reacting. Maybe your step was finally saying no when your old self would have said yes just to avoid conflict. Maybe your step was choosing discipline when fear wanted comfort. Maybe your step was choosing faith when your circumstances were still giving you reasons to panic. Do not rush past this. The move was not powerful because it looked big. The move was powerful because it proved you had changed. The old you would have delayed. The old you would have begged for a sign after already receiving confirmation. The old you would have returned to the familiar, not because it was good, but because it was known. The old you would have kept one hand on the promise and one hand on the pain, trying to walk into a new life while still negotiating with an old wound. But this time, something in you moved differently. You did not need everyone to agree. You did not need the full picture. You did not need the crowd to validate what your spirit already knew. You made a move from a deeper place, a quieter place, a place that had been trained through waiting, refined through disappointment, and strengthened through seasons when nobody saw how much it cost you to keep going. That is why the step mattered. It was evidence. It was evidence that you are no longer the same person who needed permission to become free. It was evidence that you are no longer willing to betray your future just to keep peace with your past. It was evidence that the lesson finally landed, not only in your mind, but in your choices. And the divine responds to evidence, not performance, not pretending, not loud spiritual language with no obedience behind it. Evidence, the kind of evidence that shows up when no one is watching, the kind that appears when you choose alignment without a guarantee, the kind that rises when you finally stop waiting for life to feel easy before you move. This is why you did not recognize the size of what happened, because the step was small enough to be overlooked, but sacred enough to be recorded. There are moments in your life that do not announce themselves while they are happening. They do not come with thunder. They do not come with people clapping. They do not come with every circumstance changing overnight. They arrive quietly, like a seed entering soil. And at first, a seed looks like nothing. It disappears. It gets buried. It seems hidden. It seems silent. But the moment it enters the right ground, a process begins that cannot be judged by what the eye sees. That is what your step was. A seed, a signal, a sacred agreement with the future that has been trying to reach you. For years, you may have wondered why things moved so slowly. You may have asked why certain doors stayed closed, why certain people left, why certain prayers seemed delayed, why you kept doing inner work, making better choices, trying to stay faithful, trying to remain soft without becoming weak. And still the manifestation of your promise felt far away. But here is the first revelation. The waiting was not wasted. The waiting was not empty. The waiting was not proof that you were forgotten. The waiting was measuring capacity. Because there are blessings that can enter your life quickly, and there are blessings that must wait until the person receiving them becomes stable enough to carry them. Not because the divine is cruel, not because you were being punished, but because a blessing that arrives before capacity can become pressure. A door that opens before identity is healed can become confusion. A promise that lands before discernment is formed can be lost to the same pattern that once wounded you. This is why some things did not come when you wanted them. Your delay was not only about time, it was about formation. The silence taught you how to listen beyond noise. The disappointment taught you how to stop worshipping outcomes. The rejection taught you that being overlooked by people does not mean being unseen by heaven. The closed doors taught you to stop forcing what was never assigned to you. The wilderness taught you that you can survive without the things you once thought you needed. And now, because of the step you just took, the formation is speaking. The step says, I learned. The step says, I am not going back. The step says, I will not shrink to fit a place that cannot hold what I am becoming. The step says, I trust the path, even when the full map has not been handed to me. That is why your waiting is over in a deeper way than you expected. Not because the next 10 years will require no patience. Not because life will never test you again. Not because everything will suddenly become effortless, but because the old kind of waiting, the waiting that came from being unprepared, unavailable, divided, and still attached to the old pattern, has completed its assignment. You are not waiting from the same place anymore. You are not hoping from the same identity anymore. You are not praying from the same fear anymore. You are not standing outside the door as the person you used to be. You are standing at the threshold as someone who has been formed, broken open, restored quietly, and made ready in ways you could not see while it was happening. Stay with this message until the end, because you need the whole picture. In a moment, you are going to understand why that step activated something long-term, why the delay had to end through your agreement and not just through time, why the old pattern may try to pull you back after the door opens, and how to protect the blessing instead of accidentally returning to the version of yourself that could not carry it. This is not about hype. This is about stewardship. It is about recognizing what opened, understanding what changed, and refusing to abandon the future you just agreed to enter. Because the blessing is not only arriving around you, it is requiring something within you. And this is where many people misunderstand divine timing. They think divine timing is only about a date on a calendar. They think it means waiting until the right day, the right month, the right year, the right opportunity, the right person, the right sign. But divine timing is also about agreement. The right season can be near, but if your agreement is still tied to fear, you will keep delaying what is already trying to arrive. The right door can be open, but if your identity still belongs to rejection, you will keep standing outside it, asking if you are allowed to enter. The right blessing can be prepared, but if your choices are still protecting the old wound, you will keep calling it patience when it is really fear wearing spiritual language. That is why the step you took mattered so much. It broke an agreement. Maybe you broke agreement with scarcity. Maybe you stopped believing that struggle is the only way your life can be honest. Maybe you broke agreement with rejection. Maybe you stopped acting like people who left you have the final word over your worth. Maybe you broke agreement with confusion. Maybe you stopped asking for more signs when your spirit had already been clear. Maybe you broke agreement with guilt. Maybe you stopped thinking that protecting your peace makes you selfish. Whatever the form was, Something shifted when you moved. You did not just leave something. You entered something. You entered a different authority, a different rhythm, a different relationship with your own future. And this is why the next season cannot be understood through the language of the last season. The last season taught you survival. This season is going to teach you stewardship. The last season taught you endurance. This season is going to teach you expansion. The last season taught you how to keep going when nothing made sense. This season is going to teach you how to carry what you once only prayed for. But before that can happen, you must stop calling your steps small. You must stop saying, "I only did what I had to do." No, you did what the old version of you could not do. You chose differently. You answered differently. You released differently. You trusted differently. You moved differently. And that difference became the signal. This is why the blessing connected to your step is not only about receiving more. It is about becoming someone who can carry more without losing peace, losing humility, losing discernment, or losing the sacred center that was built in you through the years no one understood. There is a kind of blessing that comes like a spark. It lights up a moment, gives you relief, and reminds you that grace is real. But there is another kind of blessing that comes like a tree. It grows roots. It creates shade. It bears fruit in more than one season. It becomes something your future can live under. That is the kind of blessing this title is pointing toward. A 10-year blessing does not mean every detail is predictable. It does not mean you will control the next decade. It means a long cycle is beginning. A cycle of restoration. A cycle of clearer purpose. A cycle of better alignment. A cycle where the things that used to resist you no longer have the same permission to delay you. But here is the part you must hear with maturity. A cycle can open, but you still have to walk in agreement with it. That is why the old pattern may try to call you back. Not because the blessing is weak, not because the door is fake, not because you imagine the shift, but because every threshold tests identity. Every new season asks, are you really coming forward, or are you going to drag the old version of yourself into a place it cannot survive? This is where your discernment matters. The thing you walked away from may suddenly look softer in your memory. The old habit may suddenly feel familiar again. The person who did not respect your peace may suddenly sound reasonable. The fear you just overcame may suddenly whisper that maybe you moved too soon, maybe you asked for too much, maybe you should go back and make everyone comfortable again. Do not be surprised by that. The old season often reaches for you after you have outgrown it. Not before, after. Because while you were still trapped in it, it did not need to fight for your attention. It already had your agreement. But the moment you moved, the moment you chose differently, the moment you stopped feeding it with your fear, it lost access. And anything that loses access will try to convince you that your freedom is dangerous. That is why you need to understand what happened. You are not being dramatic. You are not being too much. You are not being cold because you can no longer carry what kept breaking you. You are not being ungrateful because you are ready for a life that does not require you to shrink. You are not betraying your past by stepping into your future. The step you took was a declaration. Even if you did not say it out loud, your life said it. It said, I am ready. It said, I have learned. It said, I will not keep circling the same mountain and calling it loyalty. It said, I will not keep watering what God has already asked me to release. It said, I will not keep confusing delay with destiny. And when that declaration rose from your action, not just your words, something opened. Now, there is another layer to this, and I want to introduce it gently, because it matters more than many people realize. Sometimes the reason a person keeps returning to old cycles is not because they do not want change. It is because their inner state has been trained by stress for so long that peace feels unfamiliar. Their mind keeps searching for danger. Their thoughts keep preparing for disappointment. Their nervous system keeps treating abundance, rest, and receiving as if they are unsafe. So even when a blessing is near, they can still operate from the frequency of survival. This is why alignment is not only a spiritual idea. It touches the way you think, the way you decide, the way you respond, and the way you receive. When someone lives in constant pressure, their inner world can become rigid. They may pray for expansion while still making decisions from fear. They may ask for provision while still expecting loss. They may want a new season while their mind keeps replaying the old one. Later, I want to show you something connected to this, something simple that some people use as a daily support for shifting out of that old stress pattern and into a calmer state of receptivity and focus. It is not magic. It does not replace wise choices. It does not remove your responsibility. But for those who feel called to understand the connection between spiritual alignment and the state of the mind, it may help you see why your inner frequency matters so much in the season you are entering. For now, just hold this truth. The step opened the door, but alignment helps you remain in the room, because the blessing that is forming around you cannot be carried by the version of you that kept living in panic, apology, and fear. It must be carried by the version of you that is learning to stay steady, to move with discernment, to protect peace, to hear guidance clearly, and to refuse the old agreement when it tries to dress itself up as wisdom. This is why the step you took was not an ending only. It was a beginning. It was not only the closing of an old door, it was the opening of a decade door. It was not only the release of what drained you, it was the invitation into what can finally build you. It was not only you saying no to the past, it was you saying yes to a future that needed your cooperation before it could fully unfold. Think of Joseph. The pit did not look like preparation while he was in it. The betrayal did not look like positioning. The waiting did not look like favor. But when the time came, the years that looked wasted became the very training that allowed him to stand in a place of responsibility without being destroyed by it. Think of David. He was anointed before he was publicly recognized. He had oil on his life while still being sent back to fields, sheep, silence, and hidden battles. The crown did not appear the moment the calling was spoken, because his capacity had to grow until his character could survive what his destiny would demand. Think of Ruth. One faithful step into an uncertain future changed the direction of her life. She did not know the full story when she moved. She only knew what loyalty, courage, and alignment required in that moment. And that one step placed her on a path she could not have planned with human strategy alone. This is the pattern: a hidden step, a season of formation, a quiet crossing, then a door that proves the waiting was never empty. Chosen one. This is why you cannot judge your life only by what changed immediately after the step. The seed does not become a tree the day it enters the ground, but from the moment it is planted, the process has begun. The soil is responding. The roots are searching. The unseen is moving before the visible can explain it. And right now, there are things moving in the unseen that your current circumstances have not caught up with yet. That is why you must not panic. That is why you must not run backward. That is why you must not let one quiet day convince you that nothing happened. A quiet day does not mean the blessing stopped. A delayed result does not mean the door closed. A familiar test does not mean you failed. A moment of uncertainty does not cancel an aligned step. The old season lost authority when your agreement changed. And this is the third revelation. Your waiting ended when your agreement changed. Not when every person understood. Not when every bill was solved. Not when every relationship was restored. Not when every sign appeared. Not when life became perfectly comfortable. Your waiting ended when you stopped partnering with the inner posture that kept you bound to what you were praying to outgrow. That is why the step is so important. It was not random behavior. It was not a mood. It was not a temporary emotional reaction. It was a spiritual signature. It showed that something inside you is no longer available for the same cycle. And I hear this being placed on my heart for you. The divine saw the moment you chose faith over fear. The divine saw the moment you released what you could not carry anymore. The divine saw the moment you stopped explaining yourself to what only wanted access, not understanding. The divine saw the private cost of your public calm. The divine saw the step, and the step was accepted. Now you must understand what comes next, because activation is not the same as stewardship. Many people open a door and then lose the rhythm of the new room because they keep returning to the old hallway. They receive confirmation, then ask fear for permission. They cross the threshold, then keep checking behind them. They say they want the promise, but they keep feeding the pattern that delayed it. That will not be your story if you remain awake. The next question is not whether the door opened. The next question is whether you will protect the door. Because the blessing connected to this step is not fragile, but it is sacred. And sacred things must be guarded, not with paranoia, not with fear, not with control, but with discernment, consistency, and a refusal to become available again to what the divine just helped you outgrow. Your waiting is over, but your stewardship has begun. The step activated the door. Now you must learn how to live like the door is open. Because the door opening is one thing. Becoming the kind of person who can remain inside the new season is another. And this is where your maturity will be tested, chosen one. Not in the loud moments, not in the moments when everything is obvious, not when the blessing is visible enough for everyone to congratulate you. Your maturity will be tested in the quiet space between activation and manifestation, when the old pattern tries to sound reasonable, when fear tries to call itself wisdom, and when the familiar tries to convince you that the new door is too much for you. Do not let that happen. The step you took was not random. It was the evidence that you have outgrown the old room. But now, the question becomes this: will you keep living like someone who has outgrown it? Or will you keep visiting the old room in your mind, asking it to validate what the divine has already released you from? That is the place where many people lose momentum. They do not lose the blessing because the blessing is weak. They lose connection with it because they keep making agreements with the identity that could not receive it. They take one step forward, then spend the next several days apologizing for the step. They finally choose peace, then start explaining themselves to people who only benefited from their confusion. They finally release the old door, then keep checking to see if the old door misses them. Chosen one, hear this clearly. The door opened, but your agreement must change daily. The next season is not only a blessing, it is a new operating system. It is a new way of choosing, a new way of thinking, a new way of hearing, a new way of protecting your peace, and a new way of seeing your own future. You cannot enter a decade-level blessing with a survival-level identity. You cannot carry a larger assignment with the same habits that kept you exhausted. You cannot receive greater provision while still letting fear make every decision. You cannot build something lasting while still asking temporary people for permission to become permanent in your purpose. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming consistent. A new operating system means your life begins to respond to different commands. Before, fear may have been the command. Rejection may have been the command. Scarcity may have been the command. The need to be understood may have been the command. The pressure to keep everyone comfortable may have been the command. But now, alignment must become the command. Peace must become the command. Discernment must become the command. Purpose must become the command. You are no longer living from the question, what will they think of me? You are learning to live from the question, what is this season requiring of me? That shift is massive, because the blessing that opened is not merely an event, it is a cycle. It is a long movement of restoration, direction, provision, and internal stability. It will not always arrive in the form you expect. Sometimes it will arrive as a new connection, sometimes as a closed door that protects you from wasting 5 more years, sometimes as an idea that returns again and again until you finally respect it, sometimes as the courage to stop begging for spaces that were never built for your becoming. This is why the next 10 years must be protected in the next 10 decisions. Not in panic, not in pressure, not in superstition, but in alignment. The first area being reorganized is your purpose. You are going to notice that what used to feel confusing begins to separate into what is assigned and what is only distracting. You may still have questions, but the fog will not hold the same power. You will begin to sense which doors carry life and which doors only carry noise. You will begin to realize that not every opportunity is your opportunity, and not every open door is your door. That is part of the blessing. Clarity is provision. Direction is provision. The ability to say no without guilt is provision. The ability to stop wasting your strength on what was never assigned to you is provision. The second area being reorganized is your relationships. Some connections will not survive the version of you that no longer performs for acceptance. This does not mean you need to be harsh. It does not mean you need to become cold. It means your life will no longer be built around keeping access open for people who only know how to meet the old version of you. Some people understood your struggle better than they can understand your healing. Some people were comfortable with your confusion because it made you easier to control. Some people loved your availability more than they loved your becoming. And when you step into a new season, you must be willing to let the wrong access expire. This is not rejection, it is order. This is not bitterness, it is stewardship. This is not pride, it is maturity. The third area being reorganized is provision, and I want you to hear this with a grounded heart. Provision is not only money, provision is support, timing, wisdom, strategy, health in your decisions, favor in the right rooms, and resources arriving through doors that match your calling instead of your desperation. For those entering this season, you may begin to see resources come through channels you did not expect. Not because you forced them, not because you begged for them, but because alignment has a way of making you visible to what belongs to your assignment. But do not worship the resource. The resource is not the source. The door is not the source. The person is not the source. The opportunity is not the source. The divine is the source, and everything else is a channel. That is why you must not panic when one channel closes. That is why you must not collapse when one person does not understand. That is why you must not call yourself abandoned just because one path changes direction. A decade-level blessing is not built on one fragile circumstance. It is built on alignment with the one who knows how to send provision through ways you have not even imagined yet. And this is where I hear the divine saying to your heart, do not return to the place I just delivered you from. Do not return to the fear because the new door feels unfamiliar. Do not return to the old conversation because silence feels uncomfortable. Do not return to the old identity because growth feels lonely. Do not return to the smaller life because expansion requires responsibility. You asked for the door. Now become the person who can stay inside it. And the way you begin is simple. Inside your mind, I want you to identify the step. Do not overthink it. Do not search for something dramatic. Let the true moment rise. The boundary, the release, the decision, the refusal, the quiet yes, the sacred no, the moment when you chose differently and something in you knew you could not go back to being the same. Name it within yourself. Say within your spirit, that was the threshold. That was the moment I stopped agreeing with the old cycle. That was the moment I chose the future, even before the future had fully appeared. This is the threshold audit. Not something you need to write down right now. Not something you need to perform outwardly. It is an inner recognition. Because what you cannot name, you may accidentally abandon. But what you can recognize, you can protect. Recognize the step. Honor the step. Do not explain the step to people who are committed to misunderstanding why you had to take it. And if this message is speaking directly to you, there is one short sentence you can place in the comments when it feels right. I will not return to the old door. Not as performance, not as noise, as a witness, as a mark, as a simple agreement with the future you just stepped into, because the old door may test you. It may test you through nostalgia. It may test you through loneliness. It may test you through guilt. It may test you through a person suddenly acting like they understand after refusing to understand for years. It may test you through a familiar fear that says, "Are you sure you are ready for this?" And when that happens, you need the no return rule. The no return rule is not about hatred. It is not about cutting people off just to feel powerful. It is not about becoming untouchable, unreachable, or hard. It means you do not reopen what peace required you to close. You do not walk back into confusion just because clarity feels quiet. You do not trade the future for the comfort of something you already survived. You can love people and still not return. You can forgive people and still not return. You can miss something and still not return. You can feel uncertain and still not return. You can have compassion and still not return. Because returning is not always physical. Sometimes returning happens in your thoughts. Sometimes returning happens when you keep rehearsing old conversations. Sometimes returning happens when you keep asking if you were wrong for finally choosing peace. Sometimes returning happens when you shrink your language, your expectation, your prayer, and your self-respect just to make the old environment feel comfortable again. Do not return mentally to a place you have already left spiritually. When the old door calls, answer from the new room. When fear asks if you are sure, answer with alignment. When guilt asks who you think you are, answer with identity. When the past asks for access, answer with peace. You are not being cruel. You are being consistent. You are not being selfish. You are being stewarded. You are not being dramatic. You are being delivered from repetition. The next 10 years cannot be built with the same agreement that exhausted the last 10 years. That is why your inner state matters so much now, because every blessing has an atmosphere. Every decision has a frequency. Every action is shaped by the place inside you that it comes from. When you make decisions from panic, even good opportunities can become heavy. When you make decisions from scarcity, even open doors can feel unsafe. When you make decisions from old rejection, even divine provision can be questioned until your fear talks you out of receiving it. This is why alignment must become practical. It cannot only be something you say. It has to become something you return to. Many chosen ones are spiritually sensitive, but they have been trained by pressure for so long that calm feels unfamiliar. Their mind stays alert for loss. Their thoughts keep preparing for disappointment. Their inner world keeps bracing for what could go wrong, even when something good is trying to enter. And if you have lived in that state long enough, you can mistake survival for wisdom. You can call it discernment when it is really fear. You can call it humility when it is really unworthiness. You can call it patience when it is really avoidance. You can call it being realistic when it is really an old wound, asking to lead your future. This is why some people can pray for a blessing and still resist the state required to receive it. Their spirit is asking for expansion, but their mind is still locked in pressure. Their mouth says yes, but their inner rhythm says danger. Their future is calling, but their nervous system keeps answering with the language of the past. This is where the bridge between the spiritual and the practical becomes important. There is a reason peace changes what you can hear. There is a reason calm changes what you can notice. There is a reason a clear inner state helps you recognize doors you would miss while living in constant stress. When your mind is trapped in a high-pressure state, it keeps scanning for threats. It keeps repeating the old story. It keeps choosing from urgency instead of alignment. But when you enter a calmer, more receptive state, you begin to respond differently. You hear more clearly. You decide more wisely. You stop confusing every delay with rejection. You stop treating every unknown as danger. You stop letting scarcity become the voice that interprets your life. That is why I want to mention something here with honesty and care. There is a simple audio tool called the Wealth Signal. It is a 5-minute digital audio track designed to be listened to with headphones. Its purpose is to support a shift from the stressed, pressured beta state into a calmer alpha state. the kind of state connected with flow, receptivity, and clearer inner alignment. It is not magic. It is not a substitute for obedience, wisdom, patience, or practical action. It does not remove your responsibility to steward your life. But for those who feel like they have been spiritually ready, while their mind keeps returning to scarcity, pressure, and survival, this may be a supportive tool to explore. The idea is simple. If your mind is like a radio, stuck on static, you do not need to fight the static harder. You need to retune the signal. The wealth signal is built around that kind of recalibration. 5 minutes a day. Headphones. No complicated ritual. No long practice. Just a simple support for people who want to bring their inner state into agreement with the abundance, peace, and clarity they have been praying to carry. The information connected to it is available where it has been placed for those who feel led to look deeper. Investigate it only if your spirit resonates with this. The original offer is positioned at $39, and it includes additional resources such as a quick cash flow blueprint, 11 easy money hacks, 20 success stories, and the greatest affirmation secret. It also comes with a 100% refund policy, so the invitation is not based on pressure. Again, this is not about buying a miracle. It is about supporting alignment. The real assignment remains the same. You must become the person who can carry what has opened, and whether you use a tool or not, the truth remains. Your inner agreement matters. Your state matters. Your attention matters. Your daily rhythm matters. Because the door is open, but your old patterns will still try to interpret the new room through old fear. So now you need the decade alignment practice. This is not a physical exercise. You can do it while sitting, lying down, walking through your day, or even moving through responsibilities. It is an inward command. See the version of you who has already learned how to steward the next 10 years. Do not imagine them as distant or unreachable. Imagine them as already standing a few steps ahead of you, calm, grounded, clear, and unwilling to negotiate with what once kept them bound. Now ask within yourself, what would that version of me refuse today? Not out loud, if you cannot. Just let the question move through your inner world. What would that version refuse? Maybe they would refuse panic. Maybe they would refuse the old conversation. Maybe they would refuse to check the door they already closed. Maybe they would refuse to make decisions from loneliness. Maybe they would refuse to call fear wisdom. Now ask, what would that version protect today? Maybe they would protect peace. Maybe they would protect focus. Maybe they would protect the new idea that has been trying to grow. Maybe they would protect their energy from unnecessary explanations. Maybe they would protect the quiet seed before it becomes visible enough for others to judge. And now ask, what would that version build quietly today? Because decade blessings are not only received, they are built. They are built through small aligned decisions. They are built through repeated obedience. They are built through saying no when the old pattern wants access. They are built through saying yes when purpose asks for consistency. They are built through protecting the seed while it is still underground. Do this within yourself whenever fear tries to pull you backward. Do not argue with fear for hours. Do not build a courtroom in your mind and put your future on trial. Simply return to the inner command. I live like the door is open. That is the sentence. I live like the door is open. When doubt says nothing changed, answer, I live like the door is open. When the past asks for access, answer, I live like the door is open. When scarcity tries to interpret your future, answer, I live like the door is open. When old guilt asks you to shrink, answer, I live like the door is open. That sentence is not empty. It is a spiritual posture. It trains your attention to stop bowing to the old room. It reminds your mind that the threshold has already been crossed. It teaches your decisions to agree with the blessing instead of agreeing with the delay. Chosen one, you are not becoming someone random. You are becoming the cycle breaker. You are the one who interrupts what others kept repeating. You are the one who finally says, "This pattern ends with me." Not because you are stronger in your own power, but because you are willing to let the divine form you into someone who does not worship familiarity. You are becoming the builder. You are no longer only surviving storms. You are learning how to build something that remains after the storm passes. A stable life, a clear purpose, a disciplined rhythm, a future that does not depend on chaos to feel real. You are becoming the spiritual warrior, not the loudest person in the room, not the one who needs to prove power through noise. The true warrior is the one who can hold ground after confirmation, the one who does not collapse because the promise takes process, the one who understands that peace can be a weapon when fear is trying to rule the atmosphere. You are becoming the pioneer, the one who goes first, the one who steps into the unfamiliar before everyone understands it, the one who cannot keep waiting for a crowd to approve a path that was never given to the crowd. You may feel alone at times, but alone does not mean wrong. Sometimes alone means first. You are becoming the light bearer, the one who carries clarity into places that were filled with confusion, the one whose life becomes proof that delay is not defeat, the one whose healing becomes a signal to others that they can rise too, the one whose next 10 years will not only bless them, but create shade for people who are still trying to believe that their own seed can grow. This is why you had to go through the formation. The blessing is not just for comfort, it is for assignment. The provision is not just for relief, it is for purpose. The opening is not just for celebration, it is for stewardship. And the step you took was the first visible evidence that you are ready to participate in what has been prepared. Do not despise the quiet beginning. Do not despise the small seed. Do not despise the hidden root. A tree does not become strong because everyone watched it grow. A tree becomes strong because it was rooted before it was visible. And you, chosen one, have been rooted through seasons you did not know how to explain. You were rooted through rejection. You were rooted through silence. You were rooted through waiting. You were rooted through endings. You were rooted through nights when all you could do was keep choosing not to quit. And now, what was rooted in secret is beginning to rise in season. This is the sacred meaning of what just happened. The step was seen. The waiting was not wasted. The old agreement broke. The door opened. The blessing began. And now, your stewardship begins. So receive this within your spirit. You do not have to chase what has been assigned to you through alignment. You do not have to beg the old season to bless what it was never designed to carry. You do not have to shrink your language, your hope, your expectation, or your obedience to make fear comfortable. You do not have to return to the place where your peace was constantly negotiated. You are allowed to outgrow the room. You are allowed to outgrow the conversation. You are allowed to outgrow the version of yourself that survived by staying small. You are allowed to protect what the divine is building in you. You are allowed to become unavailable to patterns that only recognized you when you were wounded. And you do not owe an apology for becoming who you were always being prepared to be. Let this be sealed over your next season. May the step you took be protected from doubt. May the door that opened be protected from fear. May the blessing that began be protected from sabotage. May your mind be brought into peace. May your decisions be brought into alignment. May your relationships be brought into order. May your provision be brought through the right channels. May your purpose become clearer with each faithful step. And may the next 10 years answer the courage of the move you just made. Not through chaos, not through striving, not through desperation, but through alignment, wisdom, favor, and a steady becoming that no old pattern can reverse. If the old door calls, you will not return. If fear questions you, you will not bow. If guilt pressures you, you will not shrink. If delay tries to rename itself as destiny, you will discern the difference. Because you are not standing outside the door anymore. You are standing inside the beginning The seed is in the ground. The root is moving. The season has turned. The waiting that formed you has finished its assignment. Now walk like someone whose life has already crossed the threshold. Speak like someone whose agreement has changed. Choose like someone who knows the door is open. Guard your peace. Honor the step. Protect the blessing. And live like the next 10 years are no longer being delayed by the old version of you. Chosen one, your waiting is over. You made the move. The door is open. Now become the person who can carry what comes through it.